Once I use my tongue on you, there's no turning back, Cowboy warned. She shivered, then gave in. The sun was just beginning to rise over the wide, open plains. Golden light spilled across the rolling hills, and a soft wind carried the smell of fresh grass and earth. On the edge of a small town, a ranch stood quietly, its wooden fences stretching far into the distance. The sound of horses' hooves and the low calls of cattle were the only noises breaking the morning calm. At the center of it all was a man named Jack, a cowboy known across the county not for loud words or easy smiles, but for his steady hand, quiet courage, and strict sense of honor. Jack had spent most of his life on the ranch. From the time he was a boy, he had learned to ride, rope, and care for the animals that were the heart of his family's livelihood. Life had not always been easy. Storms, droughts, and hard winters tested him more than once, but he had endured every challenge with patience and determination. Now, in his early 30s, Jack carried himself with a calm authority, a quiet strength that made others respect him instantly. That morning, he was already up before the sun, walking along the fence lines to check the cattle. His hat shielded his eyes from the growing light, and his boots sank slightly into the soft soil with each step. He noticed that the new calves were restless, and the smell of rain hinted at a storm brewing later in the day. Jack knew his work was never done, but he also knew he enjoyed this life more than anything else. There was a rhythm to it, a simple honesty that made each day meaningful. At the edge of the ranch, a young woman named Emily appeared. She was new to the area, having moved to the town a few weeks ago to live with her aunt after her parents passed away. Emily had always been curious and adventurous, but she was also cautious, aware that life could be unpredictable. Carrying a small bag with her belongings. She had heard about the ranch from neighbors and had hoped to see it up close, fascinated by the stories of cowboys and wide-open fields. As Emily approached, she spotted Jack tending to a fence post. She paused for a moment, observing him from a distance. There was something about him that made her heart beat a little faster. Not in a way that scared her, but in a way that drew her attention. Jack was tall, broad-shouldered, and moved with an easy confidence. His hands were skilled and sure, fixing the fence with precise movements. There was a quiet intensity in the way he focused on his work, and Emily couldn't help but feel a mixture of admiration and curiosity. Jack noticed her standing there and straightened.
"Morning,"
he said in a calm, steady voice.
"Morning."
There was no unnecessary warmth, but there was no rudeness either. It was the kind of greeting that made it clear he respected people, but expected respect in return. "Good morning, Emily," replied softly. She hesitated for a moment, unsure if she should continue walking or stop and talk. Something in Jack's eyes told her that he was a man who valued honesty, so she decided to speak. Your place, it's amazing." Jack nodded. "It's a lot of work," he said, "but it's worth it. If you want, you can walk around a bit. Just be careful near the cattle. They're not dangerous, but they're not used to visitors either." Emily smiled. "Thank you. I'd love that." She began to walk slowly along the edge of the ranch, her eyes wide as she took in the sight of grazing cows, the sound of the wind through the trees, and the vastness of the open land. It was different from the city where she had grown up. Here, life felt slower, deeper, and full of possibilities she had never imagined. Jack watched her for a moment, then returned to his work. He didn't say much, but his presence was steady and grounding. There was a certain way he moved, with confidence but without arrogance, that made the ranch feel alive and safe. Emily noticed the way he carried himself, the calm in his actions, and she felt a sense of reassurance. If anyone could handle this life, she thought, it would be him. As the morning passed, Emily grew bolder, moving closer to the fence where Jack worked. She watched as he repaired a broken plank, the muscles in his arms flexing with effort. She wanted to speak, to ask him about life on the ranch, but words felt small compared to the quiet strength he displayed. Finally, she called out, "How long have you been doing this?" Jack looked up and gave a small smile. "Most of my life. My father taught me, and his father before him. It's in the family. There's a rhythm to it. You learn to read the land, the animals, the weather. You can't rush it." Emily nodded, intrigued. "It sounds peaceful, in a way. Even with all the hard work." Jack straightened fully and wiped his hands on his pants. "Peaceful, yes, if you respect it. But it's not easy. You have to be ready for anything. That's the way life is here. If you're not prepared, it can turn on you quickly." Emily considered his words carefully. There was a seriousness in Jack's tone that made her think he wasn't exaggerating. She had always been drawn to challenges, and the idea of learning something new, of testing herself in a world so different from her own, was exciting. "I think I'd like to learn," she said quietly. Jack turned to look at her fully, his gaze steady. There was something in her expression that told him she was sincere, not just curious. He studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "It's not something you can just watch or read about," he said.
You have to live it.
"You have to be willing to get your hands dirty, to face the unexpected. If you're ready for that, then maybe there's a place for you here, at least for a while." Emily felt a thrill of anticipation. She had not expected him to offer her a chance to experience life on the ranch, and yet here he was, giving her an opportunity she could not refuse. She smiled, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. "I'm ready," she said firmly. Jack nodded again, this time with a faint smile. "Good.
Then we'll start simple. Today, you'll help with the fences.
Tomorrow, maybe the animals. You take it one step at a time."
There's no rush. The rest of the morning passed with Emily learning small but important tasks.
She carried tools, held fence posts steady, and listened intently as Jack explained the way the ranch worked. He was patient but direct, correcting mistakes without harshness and praising her efforts when she did something right. Emily felt a growing respect for him, not just as a cowboy, but as a person who embodied dedication, discipline, and quiet integrity. By midday, the sun was high, and the ranch seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. Emily paused to drink from her water bottle, wiping sweat from her forehead. Jack leaned against a post, watching the cattle graze, his eyes scanning the horizon as if expecting something to happen at any moment. Emily noticed the way he seemed connected to the land, aware of every detail, yet calm and unhurried. It was a balance she had never seen before, and she found herself wondering if she could ever understand it fully. "Ready for a break?" Jack asked, glancing at her. "Yes," she said with relief, sitting down on a nearby log.
This is harder than I thought, but I love it.
Jack nodded. "It's always harder than it looks, but if you love it, the work doesn't feel like work. That's the key." Emily looked around at the vast open land, the gentle sway of the grass, the low hum of the ranch coming alive with activity. She realized that this was the start of something new for her, something that could change her life in ways she could not yet imagine. And though she had only just begun, she felt a strange sense of confidence, a feeling that with guidance and effort, she could face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the afternoon sun began to cast long shadows across the plains, Jack and Emily continued their work, side by side. The bond between them was silent but growing, built on mutual respect, shared effort, and the unspoken understanding that life on the ranch demanded honesty, patience, and courage. Emily shivered slightly, not from cold, but from the thrill of stepping into a world so different from her own. And in that moment, she realized that once she had chosen this path, there was no turning back. The journey had begun, and every step would shape who she was to become. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Emily woke early, her body still sore from the previous day's work, but her spirit was alive with anticipation. She had never felt this kind of excitement before, part nervousness, part curiosity, part eagerness to prove herself. Life in the town had always felt ordinary, even predictable, but the ranch offered something different, a challenge, a connection with the land, and an opportunity to grow in ways she could not yet understand. Emily quickly ate a small breakfast at her aunt's house, thanking her for the food, and then grabbed the small satchel she had prepared the night before. She walked toward the ranch, her steps light but determined. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers and damp earth. Birds chirped in the trees, and somewhere in the distance, a stream gurgled over smooth rocks. The world felt alive in a way that city life never had. When Emily arrived at the ranch, Jack was already outside, checking the water troughs for the horses. He turned and gave her a small nod, his expression serious but welcoming. "Morning," he said. "You ready for today?" Emily smiled. "I am," she replied. "I think I can handle it." Jack studied her for a moment. "Yesterday was just a start," he said. "Today we move on to something harder. You'll learn to handle the animals a little more closely. Don't be afraid, but stay focused." Emily nodded, her stomach twisting with a mixture of excitement and nerves. She had never been so close to large animals before, and the thought made her heart race. But she trusted Jack. He was patient, skilled, and had a way of teaching that made even difficult tasks feel possible. They started with the horses. Jack led Emily to the stable, where several horses stood quietly chewing hay or stamping their hooves. He explained how each horse had its own personality and how it was important to approach them with calm confidence. "Horses can sense fear," he said. "If you're nervous, they'll be nervous too. You have to be calm even if your heart is racing." Emily nodded carefully, watching as Jack reached out to a tall chestnut horse named Dusty. He stroked the horse's neck and spoke softly, and the animal relaxed under his touch. "Now you try," Jack said, stepping back. Emily took a deep breath and stepped forward. Dusty lifted his head, ears twitching as if studying her. She extended her hand slowly, just like Jack had shown her, and felt the warmth of the horse's neck under her palm. She exhaled in relief as Dusty nudged her gently, accepting her presence. I did it," she whispered, smiling. Jack smiled faintly. "Good. That's the first step. Patience is key." For the next hour, Emily practiced with Dusty and the other horses, learning to groom them, lead them, and understand their subtle movements. Jack remained nearby, offering guidance and encouragement, but letting her find her own rhythm. Emily discovered that working with animals required a combination of gentleness and confidence, an awareness that each creature had its own mind and mood. By the end of the morning, her muscles were sore, and her hands were rough from brushing, but she felt proud and accomplished. After a brief lunch, Jack suggested they move to the cattle. Emily followed him to the field, where cows grazed calmly in the tall grass. Jack explained that moving cattle required teamwork, patience, and clear communication. "Cows aren't quick thinkers," he said, "but they have memory. If you treat them well, they'll respond. If you rush or scare them, you'll spend hours fixing mistakes." Emily nodded, absorbing every word. They started by guiding a small group of cows into a pen. Emily felt a surge of nervousness as she stepped into the field, aware of the size and strength of the animals. Jack stayed close, directing her and giving tips on how to position herself and use her voice. Slowly, she found her confidence, learning to anticipate the cows' movements and guide them gently but firmly. By the end of the afternoon, the group was safely in the pen, and Emily could hardly believe she had done it. "Not bad for your second day," Jack said, nodding approvingly.
You're learning fast.
Emily smiled, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. She had faced challenges she'd never imagined, learned new skills, and discovered a part of herself she didn't know existed. Her admiration for Jack grew, not because of any grand gestures, but because of the way he carried himself. Steadfast, patient, and kind, yet firm when necessary. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the plains, Jack led Emily to the edge of the ranch, where a small hill overlooked the town. The view was breathtaking. The sky was painted with streaks of orange, pink, and purple, the rivers catching the light as they wound through the valley. Emily breathed deeply, feeling a connection to the land she had never felt before. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Jack asked, his voice quiet but steady. Emily nodded. "It's amazing. I never knew a place could feel so alive." Jack looked at her thoughtfully. "That's the thing about life here. It's not just work or land or animals. It's about understanding your place in it, finding balance, and learning to respect everything around you. It teaches you patience, courage, and responsibility in ways nothing else can." Emily felt a shiver run through her, not from cold, but from the truth of his words. She realized that this experience was more than just a chance to work on a ranch. It was an opportunity to grow, to challenge herself, and to become stronger in ways she had never imagined. They stayed on the hill until the sun disappeared completely, leaving behind a sky full of stars. Emily felt a calm satisfaction, a sense of peace she had never known. She knew the days ahead would be harder, filled with learning, challenges, and new experiences, but she also felt ready. With Jack guiding her, she believed she could face anything. As they walked back to the ranch, Jack spoke again. "Tomorrow we'll start early and go further out into the fields. There's a lot to see and a lot to learn. You'll need to be alert, careful, and patient. Are you ready for that?" Emily nodded, determination shining in her eyes. "Yes. I want to learn everything I can." Jack gave a small smile, the first real sign of warmth Emily had seen from him. "Good. That's the right attitude. Keep it up, and you'll do just fine." That night, as Emily lay in bed at her aunt's house, she thought about the day. She replayed every moment, the horses, the cattle, the view from the hill, and felt a growing sense of excitement for what lay ahead. For the first time in her life, she felt challenged, alive, and connected to something bigger than herself. The ranch was not just a place to work. It was a place to grow, to learn, and to discover who she truly was. Emily knew that once she had chosen this path, there was no turning back. She felt a quiet thrill at the thought of the coming days, knowing that each experience would shape her in ways she could not yet understand. The journey had begun, and with it came the promise of growth, friendship, and a deep connection to a life that was raw, honest, and real. And though she did not yet fully understand it, Emily sensed that this was only the beginning of a story that would stay with her forever, a story of courage, learning, and the quiet strength that comes from stepping into the unknown. The third day on the ranch began before sunrise. The sky was still dark when Emily stepped outside her aunt's house, pulling her jacket tighter around her shoulders. The air was colder than the previous mornings, and a thin layer of mist hung over the fields. She felt tired, but it was a good kind of tired, the kind that came from honest work and new purpose. As she walked toward the ranch, she noticed how quiet the world felt at this hour. No cars, no voices, just the soft sound of her footsteps on the dirt road and the distant call of birds waking up. She realized that she had started to enjoy these early mornings. They gave her time to think, to breathe, and to feel connected to everything around her. When she reached the ranch, Jack was already there, saddling one of the horses. He looked up when he heard her approach and gave a small nod.
"You're early," he said. Emily smiled.
I didn't want to be late. Jack adjusted the saddle straps and said, "Today will be different from the last 2 days. We're riding out to the far pasture. It's a longer trip, and the land out there is rougher. You'll need to stay alert." Emily felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She had learned the basics of riding during the past 2 days, but the thought of going far from the ranch made her heart beat faster. Still, she trusted Jack's judgment. If he thought she was ready, then she would try her best. They mounted their horses as the sky slowly began to lighten. Emily rode carefully, remembering everything Jack had taught her: how to keep her balance, how to guide the horse gently, and how to stay calm even when the ground became uneven. The horse beneath her moved steadily, its breath visible in the cool air. As they rode, the land around them changed. The familiar fences and buildings faded behind them, replaced by wide-open fields, rocky paths, and small hills. Emily noticed how Jack constantly scanned the area, watching the ground, the animals, and even the sky. He wasn't tense, but he was always aware. She began to understand that being a cowboy was not just about strength or skill. It was about attention and responsibility. After some time, Jack slowed his horse and pointed toward a low area near a group of trees. "That stream over there floods when it rains," he said. "If we don't keep an eye on it, it can damage the pasture and make things dangerous for the animals." Emily nodded, listening closely. "So you check it regularly?" "Yes," Jack replied. "Out here, small problems can turn into big ones if you ignore them." They dismounted and walked their horses closer to the stream. The water was calm now, but the bank showed signs of recent overflow. Jack explained what to look for: loose soil, broken branches, and changes in the water's path. Emily followed his lead, observing carefully and asking questions when she didn't understand something. As the morning passed, they worked together, fixing small issues and marking areas that would need more attention later. Emily felt more confident than before. She moved with purpose, no longer unsure of every step. Jack noticed the change but said nothing. He believed learning showed itself through action, not words. Later in the day, dark clouds began to gather in the distance. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain. Jack looked toward the sky and frowned slightly. "We should head back," he said. "A storm's coming, and this land gets tricky when it's wet." They mounted their horses again and began the journey back. At first, everything seemed fine. The horses moved steadily, and the path was familiar. But halfway back, the wind grew stronger, and the sky darkened quickly. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Emily felt a sudden wave of fear. She had never been caught outside during a storm like this before, especially not so far from shelter. She tried to stay calm, but her hands tightened on the reins. Jack noticed immediately. He slowed his horse and rode closer to her. "Stay focused," he said firmly but calmly. "Follow my lead. We'll be fine." Rain began to fall, first lightly, then harder. The ground became slippery, and the horses moved more carefully. Emily concentrated on her breathing, remembering Jack's instructions. She trusted him and trusted herself to do what she had been taught. At one point, her horse stumbled slightly on a wet patch of ground. Emily's heart jumped, but she kept her balance and steadied the horse, just as Jack had shown her. Jack glanced back and nodded in approval. "Good," he said. "You handled that well." The storm didn't last long, but it felt intense while it passed. By the time they reached the ranch, the rain had slowed, and the sky began to clear. Emily felt exhausted but proud. She had faced fear, stayed calm, and made it through. They unsaddled the horses and led them into the stable. Emily wiped rain from her face and laughed softly, more from relief than joy. "That was a lot," she said. Jack allowed himself a small smile. "That's life out here. You don't always get warnings. What matters is how you respond." As the afternoon went on, Emily helped with smaller tasks around the ranch. Though tired, she felt stronger, both physically and mentally. The storm had tested her, and she had passed that test. Not perfectly, but honestly. Later, as the sun began to set again, Emily and Jack sat on the porch of the main building, watching the sky change colors. The air was cool and fresh after the rain. "I didn't think I could do this," Emily said quietly. "A few days ago, I wouldn't have believed I could handle any of it." Jack looked out over the land before replying. "Most people don't know what they're capable of until they're tested. The land has a way of showing you who you are." Emily thought about his words. She realized that this experience was changing her. She was becoming more confident, more patient, and more aware of herself and the world around her. The ranch wasn't just teaching her skills, it was teaching her resilience. As darkness settled in, Emily stood to leave. "Thank you," she said sincerely, "for trusting me." "For teaching me," Jack nodded. "You earned it. Tomorrow will be harder, but I think you're ready." Emily walked home under a sky full of stars, her body tired but her mind clear. She felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She knew there were more challenges ahead, but she also knew she would face them one step at a time. That night, as she drifted off to sleep, Emily understood something important. This journey was no longer about proving herself to anyone else. It was about discovering her own strength and learning to stand steady, even when the ground beneath her shifted. And deep down, she knew she had crossed another line. Not a line of fear, but one of growth. She had moved forward again, and there was still no turning back. The morning was quiet, but the air was crisp, carrying the scent of earth and grass after the storm the previous day. Emily woke with a mix of excitement and nervousness. The last 3 days on the ranch had tested her in ways she had never imagined, and now she was beginning to feel the weight of responsibility, not just for herself, but for the animals and land she was learning to care for. She packed her small bag quickly and made her way to the ranch. The sun had just started to peek over the horizon, casting a warm orange glow across the fields. The world felt alive, and Emily felt ready. She knew that today would be different. Jack had hinted yesterday that the tasks ahead would be more challenging. She wondered what that would mean. When she arrived, Jack was already outside, checking the fences along the edge of the pasture. His hat was pulled low over his eyes, and his hands moved with practiced ease. He looked up as Emily approached. "Morning," he said. "Today we'll be doing something new. I want you to help me check the far corner of the ranch. It's a bigger area, and the terrain is rough. You'll need to stay focused and alert." Emily nodded. "I'm ready," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Jack gave a faint smile. "Good." "I rise. Remember what I taught you. Observe first, act second. The land has a way of telling you what to do if you pay attention." They mounted their horses and rode toward the distant fields. As they moved farther from the main ranch, the landscape became wilder. The grass grew taller. Rocks and uneven patches dotted the ground, and small streams cut across the land. Emily noticed that the farther they went, the more she had to concentrate, not just on riding safely, but on observing the environment. Every rustle in the grass, every shift in the clouds, could mean something important. Jack guided her patiently, pointing out small details: the path of a stream, the signs of soil erosion, the tracks of wildlife. "Everything tells a story," he said. "You just have to learn to read it." Emily listened carefully, trying to take in everything. The work was harder than she had imagined. She had grown stronger over the past few days, but her arms ached from holding the reins, and her legs were sore from maintaining balance over uneven ground. Yet, each challenge filled her with a sense of accomplishment. She was learning not just to ride, but to think like someone who truly understood the land. After some time, Jack slowed his horse and pointed to a small cluster of trees near a shallow valley. "We need to check this area for damage after yesterday's storm. There might be fallen branches or weak soil near the trees." Emily dismounted and followed him carefully. The ground was slippery, and she had to watch each step. Jack moved steadily, his confidence helping her feel calm. Together, they examined the area, noting branches that needed clearing and ground that required reinforcement to prevent accidents for the animals. As they worked, Emily felt a sense of pride growing inside her. She was no longer the unsure girl who had arrived a few days ago. She was becoming capable, attentive, and careful. She could think for herself and act with confidence, even in unfamiliar territory. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the trees. Emily froze, her heart racing. One of the larger branches had broken under the storm's previous impact, falling near the edge of the path. Jack remained calm, walking toward it to assess the situation. "Careful," he said calmly. "That branch is unstable. We'll need to move it slowly." Emily followed his instructions, helping him shift the branch to a safer spot. She realized that working on the ranch was not just about strength or skill. It was about patience, observation, and understanding how to handle unexpected situations. Each decision mattered, and each action had consequences. By late morning, the work in the far pasture was complete. The area was safe, the trees were secure, and the ground had been checked thoroughly. Emily felt exhausted, but in a good way. Her body ached, her hands were rough, but she also felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Jack led her back to a higher hill overlooking the ranch. From there, the view stretched endlessly, the fields bathed in sunlight, streams glinting like silver threads. Emily felt a rush of awe. The world was vast, beautiful, and alive, and she felt part of it in a way she had never imagined. Jack looked at her, his expression serious but approving. "You've come far in just a few days," he said. "You've learned quickly, and you're beginning to understand what this life requires. But remember, it's not just skill. It's patience, respect, and attention. The land will always teach you more if you're willing to listen." Emily nodded thoughtfully. "I want to learn everything I can. I don't want to miss anything." Jack studied her for a moment, then said, "Good. There's more ahead. You'll face challenges that test more than just your skill. You'll have to make decisions, sometimes alone, and see their consequences. That's when you truly learn." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of tasks: repairing a fence that had been weakened by the storm, moving feed to the animals, and checking the water troughs. Emily worked steadily, her mind focused, her movements confident. She felt a sense of connection to the land, the animals, and the work she was doing. Every action mattered. and she could see the immediate results of her efforts. As the day began to end, dark clouds gathered again on the horizon. Jack observed them carefully. "Looks like another storm," he said. "We should prepare before it hits. You'll help me bring the animals closer to shelter." Emily followed him without hesitation. They guided the horses and cows to a safer part of the ranch, working together efficiently. Emily felt her confidence grow with every step. She was learning not just to follow instructions, but to anticipate what needed to be done. By the time the animals were secure, the first drops of rain began to fall. Emily felt proud. They had prepared the ranch, the animals were safe, and she had played an important part in it. She realized that being responsible and proactive gave her a sense of strength she had never felt before. After the storm passed, Emily and Jack stood on the porch, watching the sky clear. The air smelled fresh, and a rainbow stretched across the fields. Emily smiled, feeling a quiet peace. "It's beautiful," she said. Jack nodded. "It is, and it's moments like this that make the hard work worth it. The land gives back if you give it respect." Emily felt a deep sense of understanding. The ranch was teaching her more than skills. It was teaching her patience, courage, and respect. She realized that her journey here was shaping her, helping her discover who she was and what she was capable of. As the sun set, Emily felt both tired and fulfilled. She had faced challenges, learned new skills, and discovered her own strength. She knew there would be more difficulties ahead, but she also knew she could handle them. For the first time, she felt truly capable, ready to face whatever came next. That night, as she lay in bed, Emily thought about everything she had learned. She realized that life on the ranch was not easy, but it was honest and rewarding. Each day brought new challenges, and each challenge taught her something important. She felt grateful for Jack's guidance and for the chance to experience a life so different from what she had known. And as she drifted off to sleep, she understood clearly. The journey was far from over, but she was no longer the same person who had arrived at the ranch days ago. She had grown stronger, braver, and more aware of the world around her. Once again, she felt that there was no turning back. She was on a path of growth, learning, and discovery. A path that would continue to shape her in ways she had yet to imagine. The morning sun rose slowly over the ranch, casting long shadows across the fields. Emily woke with a sense of purpose. She had spent the past 4 days learning, working, and discovering a strength she didn't know she had. Today felt different. She sensed that this day would mark a turning point, a moment where all she had learned would come together, testing not only her skills but her confidence and decision-making. She packed her small bag, careful to include the essentials: water, gloves, and a notebook where she had started writing her observations about the ranch and the animals. Though she was tired from the past days, she felt energized. Each challenge had prepared her for this moment, and she was determined to do her best. When she arrived at the ranch, Jack was already outside, walking along the fence with a thoughtful expression. He looked up as she approached and nodded. "Morning," he said. "Today you'll face tasks that require focus, patience, and judgment. I won't always tell you what to do. You'll need to think, observe, and act carefully. Are you ready?" Emily took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes."
I think I'm ready.
Jack gave a faint smile. "Good." They mounted their horses and rode toward the northern fields, a part of the ranch Emily had not explored yet. The land there was rugged, with uneven terrain, rocky outcrops, and narrow paths through tall grass. Jack explained that this area required careful attention because the animals often grazed there, and the ground could be unstable in places. As they rode, Emily kept her eyes wide, noticing every detail. She saw tracks of deer near the stream, the way the soil shifted after rain, and small signs of erosion along the hillsides. She realized that every observation mattered, and that being attentive could prevent accidents or problems later. Jack stopped at a rocky path that sloped steeply toward a small valley. "This path can be tricky," he said. "We need to lead the cattle carefully through it. You'll be responsible for guiding a small group while I handle the larger herd." Emily's heart skipped a beat. Leading cattle on her own felt daunting, but she remembered all that Jack had taught her. She nodded firmly. "I can do it," she said, feeling a surge of determination. Jack handed her the reins for a few cows and gave her clear instructions. "Keep them calm, speak softly, move steadily, and pay attention to their behavior. If you stay focused, it will go smoothly." Emily followed his advice carefully. At first the cows were hesitant, unsure of the rocky path. Her hands were tense on the reins, and her heart raced, but she stayed calm and guided them slowly. She spoke softly, repeated Jack's words in her mind, and moved with purpose. The cows began to respond to her, following her lead step by step. Halfway down the path, one cow slipped slightly on the loose stones. Emily froze for a moment, but then remembered Jack's instructions. She steadied the cow gently, speaking to it softly, and guided it back onto firmer ground. Relief washed over her. She realized that she could handle more than she had thought, as long as she stayed calm and focused. Once the cows were safely through the rocky path, Jack approached her with a nod of approval. "Good work," he said. "You stayed calm and handled the situation well. That's the most important part." Thinking clearly under pressure, Emily smiled, feeling proud and confident. She had faced a challenge on her own and succeeded. The sense of accomplishment was stronger than anything she had felt before. After they guided all the cattle safely to the valley, Jack and Emily continued their inspection of the northern fields. They checked fences, ensured that water sources were clean and accessible, and observed the animals as they grazed. Emily noticed subtle details, the way a horse shifted its weight, the signs of stress in the cows, the tracks of wildlife, and she made careful notes in her notebook. Jack watched her silently, noticing her growing confidence and awareness. "You're learning more than just skills," he said. "You're learning to read the land, the animals, and the situation. That's what being a cowboy, or a person who works with nature, really means. It's about attention, patience, and understanding." Emily nodded thoughtfully. "I see that now. It's more than just doing tasks. It's about thinking and observing. I never realized how much goes into this." Jack smiled faintly. "Most people don't. It's easy to take it for granted, but everything here has meaning. Every fence, every path, every animal. The land teaches you, if you're willing to learn." As the day progressed, Emily and Jack faced small challenges. A fence post that had been weakened by wind, a small stream that had overflowed, and a group of horses that had wandered too close to the edge of a hill. Emily handled each situation carefully, applying what she had learned over the past days. She felt more confident, capable, and aware of the consequences of her actions. By mid-afternoon, they paused near a hilltop, overlooking the ranch. Emily looked out at the vast fields, the winding streams, and the animals grazing peacefully. She felt a deep sense of connection and belonging. She had started as an outsider, unsure and cautious, and now she felt like part of something larger, a world where her actions mattered, where her presence had impact. Jack stood beside her, watching her expression. "You've come far in just a few days," he said. "You've learned quickly, and you're beginning to see what it takes to care for this land and these animals. But remember, learning never stops. There's always more to observe, more to understand, more to do. Emily nodded, feeling a mix of pride and humility. She realized that the ranch was teaching her not just practical skills, but life lessons: patience, responsibility, and confidence. She understood that every day would bring new challenges, and that facing them was part of growing stronger. As the sun began to lower in the sky, Jack suggested they return to the main ranch. On the way back, Emily guided a small group of horses, while Jack handled the larger herd. She felt calm and in control, noticing small details in the animals' behavior and responding without hesitation. The sense of confidence and accomplishment she felt was like nothing she had ever experienced. When they reached the main ranch, they began the evening chores, checking the remaining fences, feeding the animals, and preparing for the night. Emily worked efficiently, her movements confident and steady. Jack observed silently, impressed by how quickly she had grown. As the sun set completely, casting a golden glow across the ranch, Emily and Jack stood together, watching the animals settle for the night. The air was quiet, peaceful, and still. Emily felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had faced challenges, learned new skills, and discovered her own strength. She had grown more confident, capable, and aware of herself and the world around her. Jack looked at her with a faint smile. "You've done well," he said. "You've faced challenges, learned quickly, and shown patience and responsibility."
I think you're ready for the next step. Not tomorrow, but soon.
"You've proven yourself." Emily felt a warmth in her chest. She realized that this experience had changed her. She was no longer the uncertain girl who had arrived at the ranch days ago. She had become stronger, braver, and more self-reliant. She had discovered that she could face challenges, stay calm under pressure, and make decisions with confidence. As she walked back to her aunt's house that night, Emily reflected on everything she had learned. She realized that the ranch was more than a place to work. It was a place to grow, to learn about life, and to discover her own capabilities. She felt grateful for Jack's guidance, patient teaching, and quiet encouragement. That night, as she lay in bed, Emily understood something important. Life was full of challenges, but each challenge was an opportunity to grow. She had learned to trust herself, to observe carefully, and to act with confidence. She knew that this journey was only beginning, but she also knew that she had taken a big step forward. For the first time in her life, Emily felt truly capable and ready. She understood that once she had chosen this path, there was no turning back. She was on a journey of growth, learning, and self-discovery, a journey that would continue to shape her, teach her, and inspire her for years to come. And as she drifted off to sleep, Emily felt a quiet sense of peace and excitement. She had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to face it. Strength was not just physical, but mental and emotional. And the world, vast and challenging as it was, had room for her to grow, learn, and thrive.